So another Epstein accuser mysteriously dead, another suicide from someone who literally said she wasn't suicidal and wanted to live. Totally normal, right? Virginia Giuffre, one of the most vocal survivors who dared to point out fingers at the demons in charge, is gone at just 41 years old. Last week, she gets hit by a bus, somehow pulls through, and this week, a suicide. Yeah, it makes sense because, you get hit by a bus, survive, and then decide life's not worth it after all, and then you end it. I mean, this is ridiculous. The Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, and every other hand that helped cover for Epstein's powerful buddies all have blood dripping from their hands. Instead of protecting victims like Virginia, they played pretend with document dumps, lied straight through their teeth about transparency, and made sure the real monsters stayed safe behind the scenes. Virginia didn't just die, the system killed her, the same way it's been slowly snuffing out anyone brave enough to speak against the demons in control. Remember Mark Middleton? A lot of people who have ties to the Clintons commit suicide in mysterious ways. This guy who personally walked Jeffrey Epstein into the White House 7 times out of 17 total visits. I mean, that's not just access, that's a damn VIP pass to the pedophile wing of the White House. A few years ago, he was found dead, and the official story goes like this. Middleton hikes out 30 miles into the middle of nowhere, wraps an electrical cord around a tree, fires a shotgun into his own chest, and then hangs himself. No gun was found at the scene initially, but don't worry, it magically appeared later, about 30 feet away. Sounds like textbook suicide, right? 2 years ago, Virginia even tweeted it loud and clear. She handed names over to 6 different countries, fought like hell to get her dispositions released, and begged for the chance to live a long life. Guess the system had other plans for her. And let's not pretend Virginia is the first. Caroline Adriano, another key survivor whose testimony helped put Ghislaine Maxwell in a fancy little prison cell, just so happened to wind up dead in a hotel room. Not long ago too. Accidental overdose, they say. While her mother's been screaming for real answers ever since. Now, after Virginia's suicide, more survivors are stepping out, screaming that they are not suicidal. I mean, all of them are terrified here. They could be next on the chopping block. Juliette Bryant, who met Epstein way back in Africa, and oh, would you look at that, he just so happened to be hanging out with Bill Clinton too. Yeah, see this very pattern playing out over and over again? Victims disappearing one by one, while the media snoozes or plays dumb like it's just another weird coincidence. Survivors like Juliette are terrified, and could you blame them? Because when you try to take on the pedos in charge and expose their little famous freak show Diddy party clubs, you are guaranteed a toe tag. And just how desperate are these demons? Well, they don't want the Epstein story at all to get any coverage so badly that they're setting the stage for a world war and just pulling off their cyber pandemic that Klaus Schwab warned us about all at the same time. I mean, we got Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and now a serious possibility of India versus Pakistan going at it. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I can't even say this is for real, or once again, the threat of a world war is being used as a distraction from their worldwide trafficking ring getting exposed. Now, of course, head demon in charge Klaus Schwab did say prepare for a major cyber attack that will lead to blackouts that will make the problems of COVID seem so minuscule. Now, we got a cute little beta test of that in Spain. Power grids fail, and not by accident. By design, once again, these demons keep aggressively shoving their renewable energy revolution down our throats, not because it works, but because they know it doesn't. They know it'll lead to total blackouts, and that's exactly the point. The power grid shut down not because of a rare atmospheric phenomenon, which is a hilarious way to say we purposely pulled the plug on the sheeples. This was always part of the plan, and up here in Canada, oh, we're not getting out of this clown show either, okay? It finally begins, okay? The last stage of the Great Reset. Mark Carney, the undead banker and climate cult leader, is already licking his lips, gearing up to unleash the same green tyranny that will eventually lead to total blackouts too. Don't worry, it's called sustainability. So here's what they're saying happened. On April 28, Spain and Portugal were hit with the biggest blackout in their modern history. Airports stalled, grocery stores blacked out, elevators frozen, internet dead, cash machines useless, trains stopped in their tracks, even parts of France got clipped in the chaos. And the official explanation, brace yourselves, they blamed a rare atmospheric phenomenon for triggering a grid failure. That's right, not sabotage, not a cyber attack, which a few leaders now are trying to blame on Russia. This is hilarious. A few of them are going against the grain here, okay? Klaus Schwab did give these bastards one script, and some of his puppets are too brain dead to even follow that. They're blaming Russia, they're blaming aliens, they're blaming a whole bunch of shit. But what the majority are blaming is a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Just some mysterious weather pattern that made the entire power grid just shut down for no reason. The entire power grid, people. How do we know that's complete bullshit? Because this has false flag / beta test written all over it. Spain had just finished bragging about running their grid on 100% renewables, solar and wind, and a sprinkle of hydro. Big headlines here. Politicians bragging like they just ended world hunger. Then 5 days later, the whole thing curb stomps itself into the dirt. Total blackout. And not by accident, by design. This wasn't nature. This was a full-scale test to see what happens when you overload a fragile system. And they want to gauge how society reacts so they can pull off the big one later. Okay, they pulled the rug and they watch how fast it collapses. Real engineers have been warning for years that ripping out coal and nuclear turns your grid into a glass house during an earthquake. But Spain didn't care. They wanted their green ribbon and ESG trophy, so they gutted anything with a backbone and handed the keys to solar panels and wishful thinking. Portugal did even worse, so we can expect everything to go downhill from here. They shut down their last 2 coal plants years ago and now depend on Spain for energy. So when Spain fell, Portugal fell with it. France got dragged in it too. And of course, the timing is just ridiculous. I mean, this is so obvious. Just days before the blackout, Spain canceled a multi-million euro bullet order from Israel, okay? Israel wanted some ammunition from Spain, and Spain canceled it. I don't know, people. I'm just saying, another coincidence. Sure, if you still believe in those. But to be real, this wasn't just a blackout, it was predictive programming, a controlled test to simulate collapse. They want to monitor the reaction and prep the sheep for future blackouts, energy rationing, and climate lockdowns. It's cyber polygon in real time. They want to break the system and then blame the weather and then roll out more demonic control. And up here in Canada, we're not getting out of this. It looks like we're next to experience these same kind of blackouts. I suggest people really prepare here, okay? Have a few months worth of stored foods because you really don't know how this is going to play out. But we already have examples of what happens when they aggressively push net zero. Mark Carney is now the leader here in Canada, and that's his main priority. And yes, most Canadians are retarded and will love it. Sitting in total darkness with no power, but hey, it's better for the environment. Europe almost got sent straight back to the dark ages. The power grid came dangerously close to full collapse. And here's what that means in simple terms. The system is supposed to run at 50 hertz. That's the heartbeat of the entire electrical grid. If they drop too far below that, everything will start failing fast. So lights go out, servers crash, trains will stop, grocery stores can't process anything. It's a slow breakdown. It's a domino effect. This time the grid dropped to 49.85 hertz. And if it hit 49.5, the whole thing would have shut down like someone just straight up pulled the power cord on half a continent. That's how fragile this so-called modern sustainable system really is. One tiny dip and it's game over. But sure, yeah, renewables are safe and stable. Yeah, about as stable as Biden reading a teleprompter. Spain ran on 100% renewables for a day, and then they threw a gay pride parade victory after, okay? They succeeded in net zero. Oh my God, how great. Then 5 days later, just blackouts. Grocery stores, everything. France gets smacked in the fallout too, and then they hit us with the excuse of the year. I mean, the sun did it. They really think you're stupid. They have the nerve to scare us like we're children. I mean, putting out articles saying the sun is angry with our behavior. No joke. They've put out articles like this. Real engineers have been screaming that this is a total joke here, and getting rid of coal and nuclear will guarantee constant rolling blackouts. But are you surprised? I mean, they did say this was in their plans. If you take out coal and nuclear, you're basically asking for a collapse. Now all these countries with all these brain-dead leaders are chasing nonsensical ESG points like brain-dead idiots. Now the grid's so fragile, a butterfly sneezing could crash the system in Madrid. Spain was already drowning in negative electricity prices because their midday solar output was vaporizing demand. Everyone knew the system was skating on glass, but they kept pretending. And now we're watching the green leap forward play out in Europe. Congratulations to Portugal and Spain for achieving net zero. Zero emissions, zero electricity, zero explanations. The best part is Europe's historic green fantasy can now be knocked offline at any time. Yeah, great idea to build a fully digital electric world, right? And are we surprised? I mean, Twitter post here says, we're officially in the rolling electricity blackout phase of Agenda 2030. Of course, it starts in Spain. They literally have Agenda 2030 plastered all over their trains. Everywhere you see these signs right here. You know, the same pin that Bill Gates has on his suit. I call that the pedo pin right there. If they're supporting this little logo right here in any way, endorsing this logo, you know they're all about depopulation and transhumanism and all of the woke garbage. Countries like Canada are standing there like eager little students waiting to copy and paste the same exact disaster onto their own grids. And we have the guy here to do it. As you can see right here, he is jumping for joy, so happy he's about to destroy Canada. The new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, is dancing on stage like a WEF robot that wasn't programmed with rhythm, but he is programmed to sell us the same sustainability garbage while jacking up prices, normalizing rolling blackouts, and tagging everyone with a digital leash in the form of CBDC carbon codes. And yes, Canadians are that retarded and will accept it. They voted in Chrystia Freeland again as the deputy finance minister. The same clown that laughed while talking about freezing people's bank accounts for supporting a trucker convoy protest. You know, because we didn't want to be mandated to take poison death shots. We said we're poison years back, and now mainstream news is admitting it. YouTube channels, mainstream news on YouTube with headlines like this. Check it out for yourself. Unbelievable. They're like, oops, it was poison. I guess all you conspiracy theorists were right. But still, they shut down people's bank accounts if they even dared to protest against it. How evil are these people? But Canadians kind of deserve it, okay? Let's be real. For the vast majority of Canadians to still support these bastards lets you know we're about to see total chaos here play out. I would say this was a selection, that they just stole the election and gave it to the next brain-dead puppet, but I know Canadians, okay? I used to work at a place where I still am traumatized by the emails we would get by the manager. It was unreal. It was the most woke, leftist, insane shit you could imagine. I would burst out laughing reading it. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I would love to go over it here, but it was, confidential, and I'd probably get sued for going over it. But I couldn't believe some of the stuff they would talk about. Like, today is LGBT Day. We must share our support in the LGBT community, and we're Team Biden here. Everyone give it up for Biden. It was stuff like that, during the elections in 2020 or whatever. I could not believe what I was seeing. People here are fully on board with every liberal agenda there is. Now, this is more shocking to me than anything, that a lot of boomers, a lot of people over 50 are the ones mostly voting liberal, because these are the people that don't like getting their news off alternative news websites like BitChute, like Rumble. They just prefer to turn on CBC, Global News, CTV News, and that's where they get all of their information from. So they believe in every woke garbage talking point there is. Now, mind you, I'm not saying all people over 50. I'm saying most. Okay, here in Canada, it's a little different because if you look at the numbers, a lot of people under 50 wanted the Liberals out. So they did vote against the Liberals. But people over 50, the ones that are glued to their hypnotizing television, they want the same liberal scumbags in charge to accelerate the collapse. I guess some people just want to watch the world burn faster. There are levels to waking up. This is what I call it. I'm going to go over the levels to waking up here because the first stage is real simple. I mean, it's about realizing the liberal agenda is absolutely insane. These people are all in on transhumanism, transgenderism, climate lockdown, zero privacy, strict gun laws. They don't want anyone to have guns except the corrupt police, brain chip implants, sterilizing and mutilating children, and normalizing pedophilia. That's not a political position, okay? That's just satanic. There's nothing good about it. Zero. But the next stage of waking up is realizing that while conservatism has some solid foundations like preserving traditional values, supporting the nuclear family, putting your own country first, being pro-life, being tough on crime, and even understanding basic racial and biological realities, a lot of the people pushing these ideas are still controlled, bought and paid for. Okay, look at Congress in the US. Trump is bragging that Israel owns Congress. If you don't remove Israel's influence from your government, then you're still getting the same liberal agenda, just wrapped in 5D chess. When the public starts leaning conservative, the demons in charge simply switch tactics. They play the long game. Take Trump, for example. Sure, he does some good. Says there's only 2 genders, fires FBI agents who were kneeling for George Floyd like some woke idiots. Then what? He pushes the real ID deadline, enforces it, stripping even more privacy from Americans. He brags that he and Netanyahu agree on everything, on basically every issue. Says his main priority is sending people to Gitmo for anti-Semitism. You seeing the trap yet? Voting is just choosing which way you want to die. Option A, a fast execution, where they tell you the date and time. Option B, slow death by psychological warfare, 5D chess, where you never see it coming. So yeah, I still respect people who vote conservative. At least they want to preserve something. But liberals, I have zero respect for. None. These people are so far gone, they basically just voted to get executed if they don't obey climate lockdowns. And that's exactly what the Spain blackout was all about. It was a warning shot, a preview of the energy rationing they're about to normalize. They'll say, well, we need to limit your power usage so this doesn't happen again. And the sheep will thank them for it. But there's also a chance this wasn't just stupidity. It might have been outright theft. That's what some people are saying. Someone who worked at a polling station told me voters were asking to use their own pens to mark ballots. And they said yes, but when it came time to tally, none of the ballots were in pen. Not a single one. Especially strange since most of those voters went through the same station. When they questioned it, they got no real answer, just silence, almost like the winner was already chosen and they just needed the right puppet to keep marching the agenda forward. Mark Carney just said that he's going to punish companies who don't work to end climate change. It's just unbelievable. Like, we're living in true clown town, people. This has been debunked over and over again, and they'll keep pushing this climate change garbage till the end of time. So right after Ursula von der Leyen said on stage that Europe has adopted the teachings of the Talmud, well, they've now officially pulled the plug to punish the Goyams into submission. Are you surprised? Seems like Spain's been getting a little too bold lately, noticing too hard for the global hall monitors to tolerate. You know, they don't like that. First, they get smacked with some conveniently timed floods. Remember that in Spain? Looking like some serious geoengineering here. That's right, after Spain pulls the plug on a $6.6 million ammunition deal with Israel. Those numbers again, huh? Really interesting. Suddenly, Israel's like, we want exactly $6.66 million in ammunition. Okay. So the Israeli Foreign Ministry starts shrieking that Spain's on the wrong side of history against the Jewish state. And just like magic here comes a random blackout affecting mostly Spain, you know, parts of Portugal and France too, but this is just mainly Spain. Now they're under a full-blown state of emergency, rationing cash and food like it's wartime, while everyone pretends this is just a random atmospheric phenomenon. Totally normal stuff. They do it and then they blame nature. Straight up with COVID too, okay? They got people sick. with nonstop poisons in the hospital, remdesivir and ventilators that killed like 90% of people that tested positive for COVID. And then they blamed nature. Well, there's a virus circulating that came from animals somewhere. Okay, but it doesn't affect all animals, only humans that were poisoned in hospitals. Total nonsense. But now they're blaming atmospheric phenomenon. Totally normal stuff. No patterns here. Okay, just move along, you Nazi. Don't notice any of this. Crazy thing is, just days before the blackout, the CEO of Siemens Mobility, the same division that signed a boycott of Israel clause in a Turkish rail deal, dies in a sudden helicopter crash over the Hudson River, along with his wife and 3 children. This is a heartbreaking story when I heard about it. I couldn't believe it. I mean, the family had been posing for a photo minutes before the crash. I've never seen a whole helicopter that just comes apart in midair like that. This wasn't just a mechanical error. This was a total breakdown of every critical piece of the chopper. There are so many theories as to how this could have happened. Some are saying that the own propeller somehow sliced the tail off in midair. A lot of people are also saying there's something called the Jesus nut. I know it's a great term for it, but the Jesus nut is something that holds this whole thing together, this whole transmission system with the propeller. And that could have just somehow locked in midair, causing the whole thing to come apart. It's absolutely wild to watch this footage. It happened so quick. Sometimes you wonder, did they even know what was happening before they lost their lives? The helicopter just comes apart, it spins, and lands upside down in the Hudson River. Watching the footage is beyond devastating, I have to say. It looks like the rear motor seized up, causing the helicopter to spin uncontrollably. Then the propeller is ripped off because of the force, and then the helicopter landed upside down in the river. The CEO of Siemens had just taken up his new executive role in rail infrastructure, and his company was under heat for complying with a deal that upset the usual suspects. Then suddenly, the whole family is gone. And what makes it even more surreal, Siemens was ramping up $10 billion in U.S. investments tied to software, AI, and energy infrastructure. It's the kind of story that sounds like a tragic accident until you zoom out and really scope out the whole picture and notice just how often these coincidences seem to happen right after someone crosses a red line with Israel, global finance, or energy control. I mean, it's the same story every time. And just to make the Spain blackout more obvious for anybody still half asleep, remember how a few weeks ago, the European Commission helpfully suggested everyone stockpile food, water, and emergency supplies for exactly 72 hours? Yeah. They told you, right to your face. They always do. That's how the Luciferians operate, you know. They love handing out little warnings ahead of time. It's like some kind of twisted form of karmic paperwork, you know. Warn the herd, and when disaster hits, they get to smugly shrug and say, well, technically we did tell you. You just weren't paying attention. Should have been a conspiracy theorist. It eliminates a little bit of their guilt, it seems, at least in their lizard brains. And of course, the media spun it like they were just being responsible, telling everyone to prepare for totally random floods, fires, pandemics, maybe a little military strike sprinkled in there. You never know. And this is the insanity they want to lock in permanently. Imagine trying to survive in a world where every car is electric, every fridge, every stove, every basic survival tool, all plugged into a fragile grid that's just one engineered accident away from total collapse. You won't even be able to cook food or grab cash from an ATM when they decide you've been too disobedient. Think about the future if they really installed a system like this. If there's too many people waking up in one area, well, no problem. They'll just flip the switch, black out the entire region, starve them out, crash their internet, paralyze their transportation, and call it a climate event. Well, you know, the sun does get angry. And Mark Carney isn't even hiding it. He's standing right in front of Canadians, basically drooling about this net zero wet dream he has. He is the head of the death cult agenda and pushing this garbage aggressively in his own words. His main priority, and he's going to push it aggressively, end quote. To no one's surprise, Mark Carney has officially been elected as our prime minister. The same WEF banker who once said we have an enormous opportunity to bring climate change into the heart of every financial decision. Every financial decision. In other words, we're going to strap the entire economy to a fake climate emergency and bleed every last citizen dry. People can't afford groceries and rent, and these demons think the main priority is CO2 emissions, too much carbon in the atmosphere, reaching net zero. This is the same guy who started gushing about delivering the net zero world you demanded, he says, when in reality no one demanded it except unelected global parasites like him. And if it really was about carbon, Canada wouldn't be punished. Get this major debunking section right here. We've got 595 billion trees, way more than enough to offset the 559 megatons of CO2 we produce yearly. By their own logic, we're beyond net zero already. So why the carbon taxes? Why the economic throttling? Because it was never about the environment. It's about total control. And just to make it extra insulting, Mark Carney's first global backpat came from none other than Zelensky. Yeah, the one and only Zelensky, who couldn't wait to announce the Ukraine-Canada partnership. Okay, this partnership will only grow under Carney's leadership. Of course it will. This was scripted. Canadians were fed up with Trudeau and his circus, but just when the rage hit its peak, Trump swooped in with those tariffs, and guess who was first to step up and wag his finger at the big bad orange boogeyman? Yeah, Mark Carney and the Liberal Party. And the sheep bought it. They swapped one globalist puppet for another, and don't forget, even Trump was rallying behind Carney, behind the scenes giving him praise, endorsements, and great talks, in quotes, right before the election. That's a handoff, folks. They know what the agenda is about. Trump just recently on an interview saying he doesn't like the conservatives in Canada because the liberals apparently like him more. The conservatives like him less. So he was hoping for Mark Carney to win. So it just looks like all these things come together. The tariffs, making the Liberal Party here the heroes and everyone voting for them. I mean, all of this does make sense. It's a coordinated effort.
No, well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." You know, he was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. You know, it was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race, but he's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly.
What we're watching isn't a free election. It's a coordinated install. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying some votes weren't tampered with, but it seems like they need the majority of people or even slightly under to vote for Mark Carney, and then they can steal it with a few more votes. But that doesn't mean no one voted for Mark Carney. Trust me, Canadians are some of the dumbest people alive. If they want to fully install an exact replica of the China-style digital slavery state here, people will be so damn happy, okay? Almost no one would fight it because they're too terrified of being called a conspiracy theorist. They'd rather jump on the bandwagon. They'd rather do everything they can to impress people, please people. This is the soft Canadian mentality that'll get themselves killed. It needs to stop. End it. Be strong. Speak truth, even if it puts your life at risk, your social life at risk, which is a death sentence to the bandwagon hopping lunatics in Vancouver and Toronto, okay? Carney promises the biggest transformation of Canada's economy since the end of World War II. What he really means is a China-style hellscape, energy rationing, biometric surveillance, and mandatory depop shots just to keep your CBDC wallet unlocked. It's not a transformation, okay? It's a digital prison they want to install, all under the guise of carbon emissions. And yes, the sheeple will eat it right up. You know those freaks that glue their hand to concrete and then the police have to come to help get them loose? I mean, these are some of the dumbest brain dead people imaginable. I can't think of something dumber than gluing your hand to concrete in protest in hopes police come and release you, save you from your own retarded doings. This isn't some random banker getting lucky either. Mark Carney is a hitman for collapsing economies. I mean, that's his actual job. He's not some climate nerd trying to save the planet. He is the head demon they send in when a nation needs to be reset quickly. Just ask Liz Truss, the same woman who lasted 49 days as UK Prime Minister before being tossed out in a financial storm that was engineered under Carney's watch. He was former Bank of England governor. She straight up said he did a terrible job and blamed him for triggering the pension fund crisis that nuked their government. And now he's been parachuted into Canada. He's already replaced Trudeau and is talking about bringing climate change into every financial decision. I mean, what do you think that means? He basically means he's going to liquidate the entire economy. This creep moves between institutions, plays musical chairs with the IMF, UN, WEF, and central banks, always talking about equity and sustainability, and the leftists here in Canada ate the propaganda right up and acted like he was anti-establishment. And just like in the UK, it's all by design. The RCMP report showing Canadians will revolt in a few years when they realize what has been done. Well, that report is looking extremely credible now. They're about to destroy the nation under the guise of climate change. So get ready, folks. And here's a chilling reminder of the insanity that seems to plague both our systems and society. Vancouver has recently become the site of a horrific tragedy, an event that of course will be used by the demons in control for furthering a control agenda. This is something we've never seen here in Vancouver. We don't see these kind of mass casualty events. This is the first time, I believe, this has ever happened in Vancouver. This is truly heartbreaking stuff, and it really goes to show how dangerous things are getting out here, okay? I really believe this is a sign it's about to be total chaos around the world. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, the Filipino community's Lapu Lapu Day filled with food, music, and joy. But what ended that Saturday night was a scene so grotesque that I don't think I'm going to play some of the footage that I saw here. It was unbelievable. An SUV driven by a mentally unstable individual, someone with a history of mental health struggles, plowed into a crowd of unsuspected festival goers, mowing down men, women, and children. 9 women were killed, or 8 women and 1 little girl, a 5-year-old girl, and 2 men were killed. Bodies were thrown across the pavement, twisted in grotesque shapes, and as the stunned survivors scrambled to help, unable to fully grasp the nightmare unfolding around them, a tragedy born of mental illness, no different from the infamous 2008 Greyhound bus killing in which Will Baker, formerly known as Vince Lee, beheaded and cannibalized his fellow passenger. Of course, the authorities saw fit to declare him not criminally responsible due to his mental state. You remember that? And now, after years of being under supervision, he's been granted complete freedom. He gets to walk out among us now like nothing ever happened. Only in Canada, folks. You can chop someone's head off and eat them alive in a Greyhound bus, and in a few years you get off. Why does the government here ignore the link between violence and the state's refusal to take real action on mental health, only to use these incidents to justify greater surveillance and control over ordinary people? More crime, more regulation, more violations of privacy under the guise of safety. If that's the price of peace in this ever-creeping police state, then it's definitely not worth it. It seems like every time something like this happens, the system's response isn't to address the root causes, but rather to enforce tighter grips on the very people who have the least power to resist.
Last 52 years of documented school shootings in America, conducted by teenagers. Do you know 100% of them were on either an antidepressant or on a barbiturate drug for anxiety? And every one of these antidepressants, including Prozac, Zoloft, Xanax, you name them, all these anti-anxiety drugs and antidepressants, do you know every single one of them are published to increase the risk of suicide behavior and actions, and I quote, lead to violent and homicidal actions. 100% of all school shooters, for the documented 52 years of history, we've been tracking them and studying them, 100% of all the shooters were on drugs that are published and prescribed by your medical doctor, brought to you by CVS and Walgreens and others.
The crazy part is when things like this happen, a mass casualty event that's beyond comprehension, the stories are brushed aside with the excuse of mental illness. Yet somehow we never see these excuses applied to the likes of MK Ultra style experiments or the much deeper, darker manipulation at play by those who control the narrative. The whole story seems too convenient. I mean, a so-called mentally ill man labeled as incapable of rational thought somehow managed to scope out the Lapu Lapu festival by himself. Let's think about that, okay? He picked a target, packed with people, and noticed the streets weren't blocked off. There's no sign of an unstable mind here. It's the kind of calculated behavior you'd expect from someone who's deliberately planning a violent act. The way he approached from 43rd Avenue, clearly aiming for maximum speed to do the most damage, I mean, this shows that he wasn't in a state of random rage, okay? This wasn't an impulsive act. This was premeditation. Yet the authorities just brush it all aside and label him as mentally ill, nothing to see here, as if that alone makes him blameless. And here's where it gets even darker. Turns out the guy had a drone with him that night. Yeah, a man who supposedly snapped in a fit of mental instability also just so happened to be carrying around surveillance tech. Police won't say what it was doing there, whether it filmed anything or even if it's part of the investigation. Total media blackout. But let's be real, if he used that drone to scout the layout beforehand, well, that takes planning. That takes intent. It completely destroys the narrative of this being some random mental breakdown and starts looking more like someone being used here, a pawn. And if that drone footage exists and they're hiding it, that tells you everything. That wasn't just senseless violence. It might have been a staged event, strategically timed to stir fear and tighten state control. In truth, the man seems either incapable of self-awareness or playing dumb on purpose. His expression screams confusion, but maybe he's just trying to play the role of a simpleton, dumber than he really is just to avoid responsibility for his actions. I'm not sure. But there is a darker possibility here. He could have been used like a pawn, manipulated by someone else. But no matter how you slice it, yes, he does deserve to rot in his cell for what he did. He's far too dangerous to be walking free. When he parked his car, people pulled him out of the car and they were about to beat his ass. Security guards had to hold him back, and he had his hands covering his face saying, sorry, sorry, like as if he just bumped into someone's rear bumper. This is unbelievable. And now we're learning even more details that make this whole thing feel less like a random tragedy and more like a scripted psyop. The Independent reported that Lowe had a significant history of interactions with police and healthcare professionals related to mental health. Some reports show that he had a serious interaction with police about mental health the day before. Significant interaction. So we're not talking about someone who just slipped through the cracks. This guy was well known to the system. And the crazy part is, just one day before he killed 11 people, he called the RCMP to report that someone had thrown something into his car, end quote. And their response, well, they logged it in and moved on. That's it. No follow-up, no intervention, nothing. How does that happen? Unless they wanted this to unfold. These are the kind of anomalies you always see in these headlines. These heartbreaking tragedies. I mean, the warnings were ignored, red flags just shrugged off, mental health concerns conveniently left unresolved. Was he just a mentally ill man, or was he a patsy used to trigger chaos and push an agenda? This all happened a day before the election took place. What was it used for? Mark Carney was seen on the scene of this right away, handing his flowers to a memorial there. I'm not sure, but it does seem conveniently timed. And also a known unstable figure conveniently overlooked by the authorities right before a massive politically useful bloodbath. Something seems really off about this entire incident. And once again, this was the first time anything like this has happened. I was absolutely shocked to read that we had a mass casualty event here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Now on to this story right here. Throw this one into the conspiracy theorists were right again for the millionth time. The UK has approved a $66 million experiment to dim the sun in an attempt to combat global warming. Not suspicious at all, right? It's not just any experiment, but one that costs exactly $66.6 million again. Oh, would you look at that? Oh, who's behind this one? Does the UK even have the kind of scorching sun that would warrant such a move? They had a map of scorching temperatures over there in the UK the other day. I was just looking at it. Temperatures reaching a blistering 25 degrees. Oh no, quick, block out the sun. This is clearly a smokescreen for mass poisoning. People in the UK are starting to wake up to the satanic agenda unfolding across the world. That's how I see it, okay? First they banned BitChute, now they're openly telling you they're going to poison you. Here's an actual headline. Boeing 777s could cool the planet if you don't mind acid rain. Yeah, you heard that right. So what? Your flesh is melting off, okay? We're stopping global warming by melting off your flesh. Yeah, you heard that right. The so-called solution they're pushing is a technique called stratospheric aerosol injection. We've talked about that here many times, which involves releasing particles into the atmosphere, essentially a giant spray from planes like the Boeing 777s. They claim it could put the brakes on global warming. But here's the crazy part. The fix could come with devastating knock-on effects, in quotes, like acid rain. So let's break this down. They're talking about spraying toxic particles into the sky to cool the planet. Through their actions, they seem to be basically trading one environmental disaster for another. Acid rain? So you want to stop this so-called climate change with acid rain. That's right, these so-called solutions could make the air we breathe more poisonous and the waters more toxic, just to create a temporary illusion of controlling the climate. Meanwhile, they're already laying the groundwork with geoengineering, ocean manipulation, and possibly poisoning the very atmosphere that sustains life. And in case you haven't been paying attention, the common denominator in all of this, it's the same agenda. They want to eliminate carbon, destroy natural systems, and replace everything with a controlled artificial world that works only for the elites. We're not saving the planet. We're destroying it, all in the name of fixing a problem that isn't real in the first place. Thank God for those experts. Let's be clear, this has nothing to do with just blocking the sun, okay? The particles they're planning to rain down will be poisons. I'm guessing a neurological poison that is meant to keep the sheeple from really understanding the severity of the top-down government control they have planned. It's strange that here in Canada, we see a headline like this: volunteers needed to test no-needle COVID vaccine made in Hamilton, an inhaled vaccine with $8 million in federal funding to move to the next stage of testing. Well, it looks like they've got their volunteers in the UK now, okay? It's funny because we've been seeing articles from last year casually mentioning they want to put fluoride in their drinking water too, just openly. Non-stop articles saying they're about to put fluoride in millions of UK people's water, okay? Like, it's no big deal. They're about to load up their water with neurological poisons. And now they want to rain neurological poisons down so you can not only drink them, but breathe them. And they're banning BitChute over there too. So kind of comes together, okay? People there are waking up. They're trying to dumb them down. But that wouldn't be enough for the elites. No, they want to take it a step further. Now they're planning on having people inhale nano dust alien tech. What kind of alien species has taken over Earth? Because it's becoming more and more clear that these entities are anti-human, anti-carbon, anti-life. That's what this otherworldly entity is. We're witnessing a systemic attack on the very foundation of life as we know it. First, we had the whole agenda against carbon-emitting vehicles. Yeah, we're told that gas combustion engines were evil, that we all needed to switch to electric vehicles with kill switches for our safety, all in the name of saving the environment. But now they're targeting the ocean. You heard that right. This is their next plan here. Unbelievable. Like I said, clearly an alien species that hates everything on this planet, hates organic life. We've been conditioned to believe carbon is the enemy. But let's take a step back. Carbon is food for plants. If carbon is warming the planet, removing it would cool things down, obviously. But here's the truth. Oceans hold 93% of the world's carbon dioxide, and this controls airborne CO2, not fossil fuels. We have almost zero influence on this. In fact, warmer oceans release more CO2 into the air, but when they cool, they reabsorb it. That's how CO2 works. Because the oceans are much denser, it pools near the surface. The oceans set CO2 levels, not our gas combustion vehicles. Everything we've been told about emissions and fossil fuels as the cause of climate change is a straight up hoax. But now they want to target the water. As you can see here, so let me get this straight. The sun is bad, the water is bad, the air is bad, and the solution? Poison injections directly into your arm, right? Yeah, I got it. Totally not suspicious and totally for our health. That's the narrative they're pushing. The same people who demonize natural life are the ones pushing for the poison agenda. It's crystal clear that these solutions aren't about saving the planet, obviously. I mean, come on. They're about controlling and culling the population by pretending to fix problems they've invented. This is insane. Wait till you hear what they're trying to do now to the ocean. So let me get this straight. The same people who poison the skies with chemtrails, dump plastics into the ocean, and nuke the Pacific with Fukushima are now launching billion-dollar green projects to suck carbon out of the ocean. Because apparently the problem is too much life on Earth. It's not just too many humans, just life in general. They need to get rid of this damn overpopulated Earth. First, they told us CO2 was warming the planet. Then they said it was acidifying the oceans and murdering shellfish. End quote. This is what this article says right here. Now they want to build giant ocean vacuum cleaners like Captura in Hawaii to rip carbon out of the sea using electrodialysis and gas extraction and hand the captured CO2 over to local industries, they say, for carbon redistribution. Unbelievable. So meanwhile, GigaBlue, this is the company's name, solution is to feed phytoplankton on corporate-made substrates, fatten them up with nutrients, and sink their carbon-loaded corpses to the ocean floor for permanent sequestration. Yeah, they're saving the Earth by murdering the base of the marine food chain on purpose. The real cherry on top here is they're calling the progress financially sustainable. So we're funding the destruction of Earth's life systems and calling it progress? All this while scientists scream that the oceans are turning into acid soup from too much carbon. It's almost like they're contradicting themselves on purpose. Or maybe it's not a contradiction at all if the real goal is total extermination. The war on carbon is the war on life. Every living thing on the planet, plants, animals, people, is carbon-based. But instead of protecting that life, they're now surgically removing carbon from the biosphere like it's a cancer. At this point, you got to ask yourself, what kind of species wages war on the molecule that sustains all living things? Because it sure as hell is not human. This isn't climate change. This is climate exorcism. We are being ruled by an anti-carbon death cult that sees oxygen, sunlight, and photosynthesis as threats. The only logical conclusion is, ladies and gentlemen, we have been taken over officially by an alien species that hates life itself. They walk like us, talk like us, and run NGOs, but they are anti-carbon, anti-human, and anti-Earth. They are clearly terraforming the Earth for a different purpose. I just saw an article the other day with scientists now saying there's a reason for the lack of insect splat on your car when you drive through highways. They're blaming this on a multitude of reasons, but the main reason is all the 5G and even 6G EMF waves going around. So on top of the spraying of poisons everywhere that, killing the bees and whatnot, the 5G is also designed to do this. As it says right here, radiation from the cell phone influences honeybees' behavior and physiology. There was reduced motor activity of the worker bees on the comb initially, followed by en masse migration and movement toward talk mode cell phones. 5G systems might significantly damage the life cycle of insects, and this will lead to the destruction of the food chain. Matter of fact, guys, this is not me looking thoroughly into a alternative news website to get this information. This is flat out being said on Google. So why the hell are they rolling it out? Well, it doesn't just stop with programs to block out the sun. What we're seeing is the final act of something they started years ago. It really makes you wonder about that Deagle report, doesn't it? I know a lot of people say, well, that's just BS. It's just, some CIA Psyop trying to push fear onto the public. But I'm just saying there's something behind it, specifically about this year. A military-connected intel source nobody was supposed to notice quietly published projections that nations will be gutted in 2025, not by just war, not by famine, but by something invisible. Canada, the US, the UK, Australia, all stripped down like carcasses. At the time, it sounded insane, but look at the timeline. First came the mass injection campaigns filled with foreign materials they barely bothered to explain. Then came the frantic construction of 5G and 6G towers that seems to be killing all insects. Their own words. Now they want to suck carbon out of the oceans and rain poisons down to block out the sun, putting 5G towers on elementary schools and hospitals. I wonder why that is. Now in 2025, it seems the pieces are all coming together, right? A population has been successfully saturated with nanotech, a grid pulsing at frequencies that interact with it, and governments foaming at the mouth to take emergency powers. This isn't an accident. It's a system being primed for a mass event, a quiet, coordinated collapse that leaves no fingerprints. They didn't need to send armies into the streets to physically take people out. This is modern warfare. They turned the infrastructure itself into a weapon. And the year they picked for the fallout, the year they warned about all along, 2025. Could we see nonstop earthquakes, floods, mass casualty events across the world, people losing it, glitching out like zombies? People have officially lost their minds. I'm looking at some of the behavior here. I've never seen anything like it. It's getting real bad, and now they're pulling off the beta tests of the rolling blackouts. There was an expert speaking about a total blackout and what it would really do to a place like the States. He said that the population would drop by 90% within a few months. It would be a total bloodbath if the grid just went out for months now. And it seems like they're testing it in certain places. They're also warning you. They said it themselves, stockpile food in case of an emergency. The demons always let you know. They even warned you in a movie, executively produced by the Obamas of all people. You already know which one I'm talking about. Leave the world behind. A cyber attack leads to total blood, shed, and chaos in the States. The conclusion here is simple. Prepare. Stay around like-minded people. The less sheeples you have around you, the more chance of survival. People that are awake to the agenda and know when the time comes, it's full warrior and survival mode. Now, while everyone's busy celebrating RFK Jr. for removing fluoride from the water supply in some places in the States, thinking they scored some kind of win, what they don't realize is they just traded fluoride for another kind of poison, for trihalomethanes, microplastics, and carcinogens. The fluoride obsession was a psyop, it seems, a distraction. They let the fluoride debate leak into public consciousness to make people feel like they were waking up, all while keeping chlorine and its dangerous byproducts out of the spotlight. So wait till you hear what chlorine actually does when it interacts with organic chemicals. So say goodbye to fluoride and hello to anal cancer in a bottle, because now it's confirmed chlorine plus organic matter equals trihalomethanes. These aren't trace leftovers. They're carcinogenic compounds linked to bladder and many other cancers. The EPA says 80 ppb is safe. Independent researchers say anything over 0.15 ppb is a problem. Some towns are pushing 200. But no worries, because your government says it's fine because chlorination saved us from typhoid in 1908, they say. They're not cleaning your water, they're chemically embalming it. And just when you think the bottled water is good here, look at this one right here. The Oasis app analyzed Kirkland Costco signature purified water, you know, the go-to for people who think they're doing better. It scored 45 out of 100, a failing grade. Why? Because this trihalomethanes was 9 times above health guidelines. Crazy that this stuff is found in these bottles. Nitrates linked to blood disorders and cancer risks. Microplastics confirmed. pH of 5.9. Acidic, eroding your gut lining over time. Sourced from tap water, yeah, you know, the same chemically loaded source you were trying to avoid, that's in the bottles too. They say, well, there's no PFAS, which is great, but you still get 100,000 plus plastic particles and a nice cancer booster shot in every bottle. So while it might be a deal at Costco, just know the real price gets paid in your bloodstream. On top of that, now they're finding, I believe this is through the dimming of the sun geoengineering programs, they're finding microplastics are now raining down from the skies. Many studies are now confirming it, even in untouched regions in Antarctica. That's right, it's now part of a global water cycle. And it's not coming down alone, it's actually coming down with forever chemicals in it. The same stuff from non-stick pans, they say, and fast food wrappers now floating in the air you breathe, the rivers you fish from, and the organs you're trying to keep alive. This isn't industrial runoff, this is a biochemical war. They've poisoned the soil, they've poisoned the rain, they've poisoned your healthy bottled water. And the worst part, most people will never know because they're still arguing about fluoride like it's 2005. And just when people were finally starting to realize that injecting themselves with mystery goo wasn't a long-term survival plan, the demons in charge pivoted. When public skepticism hits critical mass, the needle campaign gets paused briefly, but not canceled. They simply switched targets. Now the war is on your water. Meanwhile, society's being force-fed fake solutions. Everyone's bloated, inflamed, dying young now. And so many people overweight from this, processed food and seed oils almost in every product in the grocery stores. It's insane. So while people have been affected by this, so many people are obese and overweight now. Big Pharma, of course, steps in with their solution. I know you've heard this, Ozempic, the miracle weight loss shot. Just one injection of Ozempic will cure you of the poisons in the grocery store. A whole cycle of death here. Except now studies show it's making people's bones deteriorate and their muscle mass collapse. Great marketing. I mean, you get them fat with seed oils and processed trash, then sell them a slow-acting death serum to fix it. And now the latest scam is injecting mice with dirt bacteria to stop junk food weight gain. You heard that right. They're injecting mice with dirt bacteria because it helps them lose weight that they gain from eating too much junk food. Yeah, we're officially in hell. What do you think the Ozempic shot was? Yeah, we'll just inject you with dirt. Yeah, that's right. That'll help you lose weight.
We have vaccines for everything from the flu to polio, but what about weight loss? Researchers say it could be on the horizon after testing shows promise in lab mice.
CU, Boulder, Colorado, I believe, discovered that microbes from cow's milk and soil somehow blocks diet-induced fat buildup in rodents, even when they're fed the rodent version of Big Macs and soda. No diet change, no calorie difference. Just weekly injections of Mycobacterium vaccae. That's what they're injecting them with, and poof, no visceral fat, they say. They're calling it a vaccine against obesity. But let's be real here, okay? It's just another death shot. Depop shot right here, okay? If you're dumb enough to get this one, get people sick with industrial sludge disguised as food, then sell them microbes from the same poisoned soil they abandoned when they moved off farms. Yeah, let's not fix the food system. There's no problem there at all. Let's just inject dirt. And of course, there's already a startup lined up to monetize it. Let me guess who's behind it. Mr. Pedo Pin himself. All this because people don't want to hop their ass on a treadmill? Good Lord. They'd much rather be injected with cow milk dirt bacteria. Yeah, it sounds more pleasant. You lazy f***s. But this isn't just about killing people slowly. This goes deeper, okay? This goes down to the cellular level. Now, I will get into some woo-woo science. I don't care how crazy it sounds because there seems like some connection here, okay? Emerging research on xenobots and athrobots, these bizarre lab-grown cell clusters, show that cells can operate with what looks a hell of a lot like intelligence. You heard that right. They regroup after damage, grow new movement structures, and even adapt to environments they weren't designed for. Scientists like Peter Noble and William Miller are now arguing that cells may have a kind of primitive awareness, maybe even sentience. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. The picture gets clearer if this was the case. Imagine each one of your cells are in their own way conscious. Then the whole agenda isn't just about degrading the body, it's about disrupting a system that might be self-aware. If cells can make decisions like this, then every microplastic, every endocrine disruptor, every mRNA injection is not just attacking tissue, it's interfering with cell communication, psychological warfare at the molecular scale. The system isn't broken, it's functioning exactly as intended. There's a reason why we're seeing studies now come out with bottled water, and because of the microplastics in the water that harm individual cells in our body, mainstream news is now saying bottled water is linked to high blood pressure. I believe there's an obvious connection here as to why that is. Small trials were showing that blood pressure changes. It drops a few points by switching from bottled to filtered tap water. The plastic isn't just polluting, it's literally modifying your cardiovascular system in real time. And the damage doesn't just stop at pressure, blood pressure. It spreads through inflammation, hormonal imbalance, and neurological dysfunction. Population control disguised as convenience. Think about what they could even put in the bottled water. A lot of people stock up bottled water just in case of a major blackout. Keep that in mind. A mass biochemical fog so thick most people can't even tell they're drowning in it. And once the money collapses, once the final domino drops, it won't just be sickness anymore. It'll be total chaos. But here's an interesting study here that isn't getting any attention. Some good news about what you can do to clean out water and make it more drinkable. Make it less harmful to your health. A lot of people are avoiding this Chinese study here, but it did show that boiling and filtering tap water can remove 90% of microplastics, especially in hard water, they say. The chalky lime scale you usually try to scrub out of your kettle, it turns out it binds to plastic fragments, making them easier to strain out with a simple metal filter. No high-tech filter systems needed, just heat, calcium, and boiling of water. I mean, this is an interesting study right here. It says right here, boiling the water for 5 minutes could remove most of these microplastics. Drinking boiled water, an ancient tradition in some Asian countries, is supposedly beneficial for human health as boiling can remove some chemicals and most biological substances. After boiling the samples for 5 minutes and leaving them to cool, the researchers noted a drastic decline in the amount of microplastics. In harder water, there was a nearly 90% reduction in microplastics because the calcium carbonate in the water became solid at higher temperatures, trapping the plastic particles within. The researchers say that using this method alongside a simple coffee filter to remove the solidified calcium could be an easy way to remove the potentially health-damaging particles. That was very interesting to me, and of course, I do that myself to get some clean drinking water in big bottles to prepare for, the big event. And that's where I'm going to leave it, folks. If you want to support me, if you want to see this podcast grow and keep going, please click those links in the description for ways to support the channel. It'll be greatly appreciated if you can be a monthly subscriber on Patreon or Subscribestar. You will help keep this show going, and your support is needed more than ever because no ads here, no big name sponsors. It's all up to the people if they want to see this show continue. So please consider clicking those links in the description for ways to support. You can donate in crypto if you want. Wallets are in the description. You can send me mail. My P.O. box is in the description as well. Send me emails if you have cool things to send. If you want me to talk about a particular subject on this podcast, if I can fit it in, I will. Emails are in the description of this video too. Until next week, folks, until next time, this is Steve Eyes. You're on the Eyes is Watching channel, signing off.